Hey, welcome. Chris Garlock here with Michael Redmond. And it is, if it's Thursday, it must be time for another great commentary with Michael Redmond. And this is going to be fun. This is one of his relatively recent games that we'll be taking a look at. Let me just hit a couple of things first. Just a reminder, the U.S. Go Congress registration is open for that. And Stephen will put up a link that you can check out all the details. There it is. GoCongress.org. You can see who's coming. You can see all the cool things. It is a week of Go in the mountains. It's going to be fabulous. I'm already looking forward to it and putting together our eJournal coverage team. So hopefully, if you're there, you'll come by and we'll be able to meet you. All right. So there's that. Also, as usual, since this is live on Twitch, then you can interact with us. So be sure to, comments, questions, and so forth. And Stephen will sort of go through those and we'll try and answer those as we go along. So sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, but we're trying to keep right on top of those. So we'll do that. And then also, last but certainly not least, thanks to everybody who has already contributed to support these broadcasts. And if you would like to do more and be part of that, Stephen's put the link up there, and those all go to making this happen. So thank you for that. So with that, let's jump into today's commentary with Michael Redmond, 9 Dan. But first, I think we can do a little breaking news here, right, Michael? We've been teasing this for a long time now, let's say, that we've been working on our Alphago book, and you want to go ahead and tell people where we're at?
Yeah, I think we're ready to publish. I think all of the it's really a very nice book, actually. I'm very pleased with how it's turned out. So I'm looking forward to it.
And let me say, folks, that here's the thing. My regular work is in publishing, and Michael, of course, is a 9 Dan professional. So one of the things that's been delaying us is that you got to please both of us. It's a really high bar. Here's what I can say about it, though. We wanted to do a book that was really different, not just a regular book, and it's an EPUB. And so what that means is that it has videos in it, and it has lots of clickable links in it, and it has the diagrams. It has lots and lots of diagrams, lots of commentary. This first volume is from the Lee Sedol versus Alphago, that 5-game series, 4 years ago, next month. And so it has diagrams, but you can play through the diagrams. And so it's really, really cool. We're very pleased with it. And we will be releasing it on March the 9th, which, of course, was the 4 years ago on March 9th, we were in Seoul.
That was it, yeah.
It seems like a long time ago and like less yesterday at the same time, doesn't it?
It was a long time ago.
We were so much younger then.
Yeah.
All right. What can you tell us about Tozawa Akinobu?
Yes, he's older than I am. He was the teacher of the IMSE. That's the Go school for professionals when I was studying to become a professional. So when I first went to Japan, he was the teacher, one of the teachers actually, who was teaching the whole school of Go students. And so he gave me a lot of lessons back then. And so that's one reason why I'm sort of attached to this game, and I chose it. Also, I'm trying out. I think I'm getting a bit fancy here in the game. I'm trying to get fancy, and I'm trying to imitate AlphaGo actually.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes on the whole, it's working to an extent, but I'm not actually playing the correct moves.
Uh-oh. Could be trouble. Could be trouble.
Yeah.
Now, remind me, which tournament is this from?
This was Judan. It was still in the C section. I started in the C section. So this was the first game in Judan. And I did continue to, I think I went to A in the Judan tournament.
And this was played when?
It was played last year in September.
Mm. And just out of curiosity, where was it played physically? Was it in
It
Tokyo?
was played in Tokyo. Yes,
Cool.
yes. Nowadays, almost all of my games are played in Tokyo. I did travel to China once last year.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay.
That was before the coronavirus, by the way.
I didn't want to ask, but okay. Not planning any.
Okay.
Well, actually, you do a cruise, or at least you used to. For a few years, you were doing a cruise.
Yeah.
But that may change. I'm thinking there's people
maybe not. I'm not getting very uptight about that. I think that what happened in the beginning of this year was probably some special cases.
Good.
And
let's
they'll
hope so.
get
Let's
their
hope so. Let's hope so.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Good. All right.
There's a lot of cases in Japan anyway.
That's right.
Yeah. So to get started, it's more fun doing Go anyway. Okay, so I have white stones playing star points. I like to play star points, especially if my opponent is playing 3/4 points. I think there's a good balance there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all that important. And computer programs seem to like this for white already, but I see that top pros don't really believe them 100%. Like it's a very small difference anyway. Like it's less than 1% sometimes.
Mm.
And some players are still playing the 3/4 points. But the computer, at least Leela, seems to prefer white a little bit, even if you discount for the 7.5 komi.
Right.
And white had a choice here for the high approach or the low approach. I would choose one of those two. And this was an unusual pincer. So I'm already sort of in unknown territory when my opponent played this. I was ready for a closer pincer. And also, of course, nowadays, younger players will not even pincer at all. They would be playing something like this.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the diagonal, the kosumi. This kind of move is much more popular nowadays, and white would be able to play. For instance, white could play an extension on the side, something like this. This extension has become popular recently. This one is still played. And sometimes with that big knight's corner enclosure, at any point, white might be playing this move. This is something you have to watch for.
Mm.
And I'll talk about this in more detail later in the game. Or I could talk about it just one move ahead, because it turns out that the move I played was this. And Leela couldn't really decide. So it was this move, or otherwise it was this move, and they were just about equal. And I didn't really have the patience to wait until one of them pulled ahead. Like if you wait hundreds of thousands of searches, maybe there's going to be a different answer. But it was sort of there didn't seem to be much point in waiting, because if black answers here, the next move Leela wants me to do is this. And so it's the two variations are going to merge together.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to make any difference. Leela was not suggesting different moves for black. So with the white pincer, white feels fairly safe with pressing here. In fact, all of the engines seem to like pressing here. I found it interesting that Kadago sort of liked the Taisha here, the large knight's move.
Mm-hmm.
And Kadago was sort of split between this move and pressing at C5, right? Pressing here. So Kadago was giving me a choice of those two moves, but I think all of the other programs will prefer this move. And this move is supposed to be okay. Top pros seem to have decided that this move is okay, regardless of where black has played the pincer. So almost any pincer, white can play this move, which is relatively new. But when the pincers are closer, it can get extremely complicated. And so, like, you have to be very careful using the pincer if if using this pressing move if the pincer is closer. But according to the engines, it's supposed to be good. In fact, you get a better score the moment you play this move. It's almost magical.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Hey, can you just run through the Taisha real quick for some of our viewers that might not be familiar with it? I know it's got about a bazillion variations, but just show them some of the simple.
The Taisha, well, like for instance, if black is very submissive and just wants to get out into the left side, you're in for it now, Chris. I have so many different.
I know. Sorry.
Uh, this becomes slightly more efficient for white, even if white pulls back and extends, because black has scrolled 3 times. Or otherwise, white can actually kick here, and we get into this variation where white has some extra potential at the 3-3 point. I'll mark that. When white plays here, this is the position of white's stone at 3 is good. I'll put a circle on that stone. The position of this stone is good because when white plays at the mark point, white will have eye space in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good for white. So going back, just going back a few more moves. Okay. I wasn't using the system ideally here. Let's see. I have to get back to playing moves. So when white plays here, maybe black's going to play this. This could be the fighting variation. And if white wedges here, it gets extremely complicated.
Oh, man.
Like I could go on for all day about that.
Yeah,
Actually, nowadays people will play this way when the ladder favors white. And the ladder I'm talking about is this one, where if black tries to capture this stone, white's going to capture no ladder here. So when this ladder favors white, white can just play a relatively simple variation. Covering on the corner is not going to work when, just like I showed you right now, when the ladder is good for white. This is just a disaster for black.
Yeah.
And there's really no good way for black to avoid that. Like at this point, black could be trying to save the stones on the outside. It's going to end up with a good result for white.
Mm.
So going back a couple of moves, maybe black's going to play here, and then some kind of extension on the side. So it could be a relatively safe move would be here. Something on the 4th line would be playable. I'm not sure which is best. Black could play this. I think I've seen this move being played by a computer. And then white would probably answer, and then white could then play the extension.
So I think one of the things for folks to remember about the Taisha, because I think a lot of people like it because it's complicated and they can.
Complicated. And what I've just showed you is one of the relatively simple variations. Like this one, it depends on a ladder, but it's relatively simple.
Right.
And you have to remember that with the Taisha Joseki, if we get into this one, there's some different ladders involved. Mm-hmm. And it also, it always depends on how close this pincer is, or if you have a pincer at all. Mm-hmm. That will change everything every time. There's a number of ladders. Some of them are not hitting where you would usually expect the cornerstone to be. Mm-hmm. So like if white, if we have an unusual opening and white has a stone somewhere around here, that would spell trouble for black in some of the variations. There's all these various ladders that you have to know to play the Taisha.
So be careful.
You have to be careful.
Be careful.
And if you're black, it's a good idea to have some relatively simple variations that you can pull back on.
Right. You have been warned.
But this is by far the most popular move here.
Right.
And now this is where I'm about to play an attachment, and I've already given you the hint by telling you that the 2 variations merge. So obviously this is the move that the computer programs want me to play.
Yes.
And black will probably answer this side. Black has some choices, but this is probably the best move, and white will cover here. Nowadays, sometimes black plays down first, but when white connects, black's going to play here anyway. So it doesn't matter if black starts with let's just run through that once more. It doesn't really matter whether black does it the old order of moves. Like people used to play on Atari here and then play here. It's absolutely no difference. Playing down, white connects, and black plays here. It's the same thing. And white will play here. And something like this happens. This is actually a modern variation. It gets very complicated. I got carried away and I put all these moves in. Let's just run through it. White's getting into a lot of trouble here, but white is sort of counting on the fact that this squeeze on the right side is giving white a lot of profit towards the right side. And white's going to sacrifice a bunch of stones here. This is just one example of one of the variations. But black is going to get those two cutting stones in the center, while white has potential to fight strongly on the lower side. Everything is uncertain. Like white's group on the right, this group here, it's not very stable either. This group on the right. For instance, later on, or even now, black could at any point play this move. And even white would probably answer with something like that.
Yeah.
This local fight is really complicated. And the fight, the fight on the lower side is probably a bit more important. And that's going to be complicated too. So everything is complicated. At some point, black wants to play this capture, which would probably be answered something like this. And I guess it's playable for white. White is sort of on both sides, but it's a very close game because black also has a very strong position in the center. So that's my my idea for that one.
It doesn't give you a whole lot of margin here, does it? I mean, it's really precise.
Yes. It's interesting because people used to cut here at this point. But instead of cutting here, curling around on the fifth line, that is the fifth line, isn't it? Is the more, that's the 5-5 point. It's the more common move now. Even disregarding the fact that black has a pincer on the lower side. So this is a local position in which the suggested moves that the computers are giving us are changing gradually. And it's still a very difficult position for us to grasp, for me to grasp at least. Maybe I should just not be talking for other professionals, but it's difficult for me. So I didn't do that. I thought that maybe this time I could play this move. Do you remember this move?
The
attachment Q6. This was played a number of times by Alphago in the self-play series. It was played by Alphago against itself.
Yeah, that's right.
So here I'm sort of remembering Alphago, and I actually knew that this was probably going to be the suggested move. But as I thought of it, I wanted to know what would happen if I played here. I wanted to experiment with this move. And I was reasonably sure that it would be, even if it was given a lower score than attaching at the start point, I was pretty sure it would be pretty similar. So I was willing to experiment with this move. And you have to experiment in the actual tournament games. Otherwise, you don't get your opponent playing a serious answer.
Sure.
And you had a question there? That's okay.
No, I mean it is. I do remember from the self-play games. And I remember from those games. I mean, it's just such an unusual. It's one of those moves that before AI would just be totally dismissed out of hand. I mean, it's just not. It's not even a move.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's
well, it looks like an overplay.
Yeah.
It's strangely it works. Like black has a number of choices. In general, when your opponent attaches against you like this, you have to play a local answer. So black has, I would say, in general, black has 4 choices. Black could extend in one of those. Let's just lay them out. This is the hane. This is the game move. So these two are strong moves,
right?
Because they're diagonal. They're filling a white liberty. They're playing against the white stone. So these are the 2 strong responses. And so this is the game move, and this is the one I made a variation for. This indicates that because black does have a stronger local position, black has a number of stones in the lower right area. It's an area where black wants to play strongly. So these are the 2 moves that I would be seriously considering. Otherwise, just for the viewers here, I'll add some other moves. Like this it would just be already weak. And white might play once again here. It's very hard to say exactly how white would continue. I think that actually Lila wanted to play here, which was interesting. And I think the idea is that even if black plays a move on the lower side, white still gets to reduce from above, and we'll be getting some forcing moves. Like even in this position, there's still a lot of potential there to have. For instance, this would be a forcing move threatening to push through on the fourth line. Or white might not. White could even. White would probably be playing away with ideas of playing here at some point, which would not be 100% forcing, but it would have potential. So in any case, I don't think that many pros would really want to go into this variation for black. This one also, even if white just goes straight like this, like white could have attached against this, the 3-4 point, but even just going straight like this and just playing something, I might want to play something on the fifth line actually, just to, because white cannot really make some territory on the lower side, but can try to put pressure on black on the lower side. And this is a bit low for black in the corner. I think white has got it's a bit painful for black to be playing so submissively, especially when black has so many stones to start with.
What's the basic concept for white in doing this attaching? What's your? I mean, I guess that's one. You know, the submissive play by black would be one positive outcome.
So like this, in this case, for instance, white's idea is that white is reducing the potential for black in that general area.
Okay.
And without having to take much responsibility for that single stone that white has played.
Sure.
So this is a basic concept, and I think that both this move and the game move become very tactical. So you just have to have researched variations that you're going to play for these. And as far as I know, they're both very even. For instance, I made a variation for this one. So this gets into a big fight where you have to know how to play. Otherwise, you're going to get smeared.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So in this case, white's going to extend in the center. And it's probably going to go into this variation, in which if black connects at on the third line, white's going to capture a ladder, and that's just going to be good for white. That's just good for white capturing in the ladder. Otherwise, black is going to play away, and I marked A and B. Those are points that Leela was suggesting, and it's going to be really confusing. So black could play something like that, or black could actually play a normal approach move somewhere on the upper side. Black could just play a ladder breaking move. And this ko in the lower right corner is going to continue for a while because it's not yet. Black actually has to continue with this move to make it a real ko. But as far as as long as the ladder is good for white, black is probably not going to connect here. So that makes it a ko variation that's going to be a bit complicated because it's indirect. So that's one way, and I figured that this was about even. And the other way is the game move to play here, in which case white is going to play a hane here. And again, the idea is that if black does something like this, white has played some forcing moves that reduce the value of the third area. So I would probably I could even play away at this point.
Because you've already gotten the response that
I've gotten the response. I haven't had to invest a move in that area because it was sente. I kept it, or I could continue here. This is also supposed to be about even, and black will probably continue with playing on the lower side. And this would get into more local fighting. Like I might invade here, and it would get more exciting in the local fight.
So I think a lot of folks would be concerned about that string of white stones on the left. It doesn't really have a base.
Right. Well, these stones, white has a number of good moves to continue with them. Like white can play a knight's move here. You see the mark, right? The triangle on the board.
It'll probably show up in a second. There's a little bit of a delay where I am, but
okay.
Actually, you know what? I'm not seeing. Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The knight's move. Oh. There you go. I got it.
The knight's move here, or white can continue pushing on the fourth line with this move. Otherwise, white can extend on the side, a two-space extension. Or white can play an attachment at the 3-3 point, which I could go into a variation for that one.
No, I just wanted to. The point is that white has white has
a number of moves
a
to
number of
improve those
options.
stones. And because they're sort of on top of black, it's very difficult for black to sort of surround them and get an attack going.
Gotcha. Okay.
So so far I'm feeling okay if black just connects, but black did not do that. Black actually played a very unusual move. Black played here, and this was definitely the first time I've seen that move. The more common move the most common move for black in this position would be to cut here, and this gets into all sorts of complicated things. Like if white plays here, and black plays here. White will probably extend down now, and something like this could happen. This is actually supposed to be playable for white. It's another of those complicated fights. Otherwise, the most popular among professionals is for black to push here, in which case we get into this kind of fight. And white has a number of choices now. Like, it would be normal for white to play the next move, an extension on the side. Or to curl around, actually. To curl around and play an extension on the side. And it turns into this big fight in the center of the board. White would like to play a hane left of black 15, but since the ladder favors black, white will probably just jump. This is going to be a big fight in the center of the board. And variations like this, similar to this, are played a lot have been played a lot by top professional players. So you could find examples of this kind of fight. And it's been around a while. Like it started when people were experimenting with this kind of thing after AlphaGo played it. So it's been around for years now. Because it started with AlphaGo. So all of that could happen here, but black played a move that was off the map for me. And I feel okay. Like, it looks like I have a pretty nice light shape. So what would you do with this? Why don't we make this a problem? Where would you play, Chris? This is where I played a really, I think you'll like the move I chose to play, but where would you play?
So this is white to move, yeah?
Yep.
Is it local, or are you not going to give me that?
Think of something in the lower right area.
The lower right. Okay. All right. I'm going to crowdsource this, guys. What do you see if I can get some help from my friends here? So Tanuki's not an option. We got to play locally. I like this. I like the cross CZ has got an interesting thing. That doesn't seem like a move for Michael. Somebody's suggesting connecting at Q7, which is interesting. And I don't think I like that.
That's probably not so good. Connecting here, black would extend down.
Yeah.
And actually, black has a very efficient shape here in the corner.
Yeah. No, I tell you what I'm looking at. Let me see if somebody suggested it. Let's go back. I don't know. It's just S5 is jumping out at me. Nobody suggested S5. This is my own crazy move. So
S5.
I'm sure it's nuts. Let me see if
You mean this point?
Yeah. Now let me see.
That's definitely a crazy move.
Yeah. It's too good. Q2. I see a Q2.
Oh wow.
This one. That's
Q2. Someone's fancy. This is actually the game move. That's what I play. And there's a good reason for white to want to try this move. But it turns out it wasn't such a good move in practice. It was a very interesting move to try out. It's great that someone came to that point. Someone strong. Well, I like it anyway.
We actually had two different folks came up with it, so that's good for you guys.
It's good tesuji, good shape, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Lila tells me that I could just simply play the very normal Atari and an extension on the side, and I think the idea here is that this black stone on the fifth line is sort of wasted. It's not the most efficient point. That stone that black is extending into the center, it's not the most efficient stone. So this is good enough for white.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, this is the best move for white. In the game I played here, now to show the idea I had, like if black is going to play something inside the corner, this is perfect for me. Because now I'm going to do that, play on the right side, and I have some extra potential on the lower side. So I sort of forced a variation where I get to play on the lower side just to show what I'm talking about. So something like this, when I invade on the lower side, that marked stone in the corner is giving me some extra eye space, extra potential to make a base on the side of the board.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this would be perfect for white. That exchange, however you look at it, it's a valuable exchange for white.
Yeah, I like it.
Well, otherwise, like if black plays something like this, covering on the side, trying to punish white, white is going to get some extra mileage out of a hane on the 3-3 point. And for instance, let's see, how will I go about this? Like if black answers here, now white gets to curl underneath, and it's actually difficult for black to cut off those stones in the corner.
Hmm.
So this is an example of how I'm thinking I can use this attachment on the second line. It's just a little bit of extra. Otherwise, I could go back again, show you yet another variation. Like if black just plays the bamboo joint here. Again, white can play here and crawl and clamp here. White actually has potential to live in the corner. Like if black goes down,
Nice.
I'm not sure I would want to do this immediately, but there would be actually this is going to be a ko in the corner, but it's a big headache for black. It's more troublesome for black, and white could just leave it at this point and play the extension anyway. Just a little extra potential in the corner. To go back to the original variation that Leela was suggesting, if white simply plays here and then later on tries to get something in the corner, it's going to be more difficult because in this position, black will not extend on the third line. Black has a double hane on the second line here. And in this variation, the whole corner that white is invaded, the whole corner is going to die. The white stones are going to die. Because black.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's just that.
So in that variation I was showing you, it's a very important, even if black plays the bamboo joint, this one, then it was a very important difference that in which now white has the option to live in the corner. So, well, it's going to be a ko because black can play an attachment here, but even so, it's more trouble for black than it is for white.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's the things I had in mind when I played this move. But actually, the game move, black cutting here, it was a very good response. Again, what human players, especially Japanese players, would call kiai, or fighting spirit. However black answers that attachment on the second line, the attachment is going to be a gain for white. So black just plays away and gives white the choice.
Wow.
So white has a choice here. Which side does white play? You want to try to answer that one?
Black's response is a kind of cool, calm, collected move that I hate to see because, it's kind of like, I'm not saying you were bluffing because I like, all your plans were making complete sense to me, but now I'm looking at it looks a little shredded on the outside now. I kind of want to make good on the probe at Q2 here, with, I don't know, the, P3, the instinctive Atari at Q8 doesn't feel so good. I don't know. I I don't
Well, I
know.
would say, yeah, very good. You did fairly well there. I'd say that White's choices, since the right side, as you said, is sort of shredded. White has a choice of White has to do something with the Q2 stone.
Okay.
So either P3 or going into the corner at R3.
And that's
And
what
the
that's what I was looking at that because R3 is just going to live. You know, that's outright life. That's not even cut. That's outright life, right? But it's going to be this. It's going to be a small life, right?
well, like just living in the corner and not connecting to those stones on the outside is just too painful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that I sort of didn't like this at first sight, but it
Oh,
turns out White can play an Atari here. Black will probably capture, and this is the
oh,
move that sort of it was so counterintuitive that it eluded me. Like if White just extends here, it's going to be very painful shape when Black plays here, and if White doesn't really want to go straight down on the second line, White doesn't want to cover on the second line because then Black cuts.
oh,
So it's just so painful. This move was a blind spot to me. Black will cut here, and Black has this magnificent thickness, but actually, this was a big corner. It was, and the lower side territory is a bit weak because White has that crawl at P2, and covering at P2 will not be forcing for Black. So actually, the thickness is not, Black is not going to be able to make enough use of the outside thickness here.
well, and using Tawari, I mean, you know, yes, black has all this thickness, but it looks a little. I mean, you got an empty triangle in there. I mean, it's an empty triangle and a bamboo. I mean, it just black black looks. I mean, white's moves all look really efficient now,
Mm-hmm.
and black, dare I say, looks maybe a little over concentrated. What do you think?
Yeah, well, Black has, if we count the stone at K3, Black has 10 stones in that vicinity, where White only used 7. So that's 3 extra moves,
Yeah, yeah,
and not really so much territory to show for it. Like White has, um, well, something like 8 points in the corner at this point.
right.
Um,
And Sente.
and Sente, White, well, yeah. So it took Black 3 moves, and if we're talking about completely territory, it actually, you could say it's arguable that White has more. And so it's just the influence that Black got. And this is the best score for White up to this point. So
Is
this is
this
supposed to be good. But I just completely missed, oh, sorry, that's a different one. I completely missed that extension. So let's get back to the
yeah, the
game.
R5 is
Yeah,
total is very counterintuitive to me.
I just completely missed the extension on the third line here. Because it's not usually a shape that you play against the bamboo joint. That's peeping at the bamboo joint.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
the fact that Black could just simply cut here, it sort of just was completely blind spot.
Mm.
So I didn't do that. I played a honey on the other side, and this actually gave back most of the advantage that I already had. So I played here, and I probably shouldn't have played this Atari yet, and then I extended. Black plays here. Um, so the whole sequence here, I'm trying to just throw away a little bit on the right, and this is a move that was good. This is the Tesuji to deal with this, and basically there's 2 points, one on the second line and one on the fourth line. White's going to get to one of these points eventually.
Mm.
So Black plays a Hane on top, and at this point, this locality has lost its value because if Black plays at A, I could do a variation for that here. If
Mm.
Black plays at A, White just cuts at B. Black would probably play it this way, and White's going to get some potential towards the center of the board in this case. Like White could continue with moves like this, for instance. And the loss of the lower side is not a big deal. Like White still has forcing moves. White can cut here to get the forcing move from the side or a forcing move from the center. Or White could play moves like
So amazing. I mean, it is so flexible. I mean, white is just backed up and backed off and have given away. I mean, one, two, three, four,
5
five
stones. 5 stones. Yeah,
stones.
a lot of stones.
But
But of course, Black has answered every move, so it's not as if I'm
yeah,
giving away stones, but I'm not giving away tempo.
right, right.
So like also in this position, like if I get a stone here, then I can start thinking about connecting on the third line here. And maybe I should do that as a variation. So let's have black play somewhere away. Now this is just for the, it's not in the near future, but stuff like this is something that I could be having ideas of later on in the game. So there's still a bit of Aji there.
I was just looking to see about that Aji. I see that's an interesting sequence. You don't do it directly. You have to do the other one first.
Well, it has to prepare for it, but like the moves like 8 and 10, those moves that are preparing for it are actually useful moves in themselves. So that make at some point in the game I would be happy to play those moves.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there's some potential that makes it okay for me. And in fact, it's it's not very important for black to be playing that. So to get back to the game position, at this point, black leaves it, obviously. Connecting at B or some similar move would just allow me to connect underneath at A. Mm-hmm. And as I was showing you, going down here, it's not so much profit for black because white's getting something back in the center of the board. So it's almost like an endgame move at this point. Black played here. And so in this fight up to this point, I thought I was okay. But actually, I've given away some of the profit that I got at first. So it's about even now. And with this move, black gave me back the advantage. So this move and the fact that black ended losing a tempo here in the lower left corner was the mistake. And black should have played away. No, not that one. Black should have played away to the upper right corner, maybe. I think a computer would invade in the 3-3 point. I sort of don't like that. But black could play any move towards the upper right corner, I think.
Yeah, it seems like this bottom half is sort of played out at the moment, right? Like mm-hmm. you guys both want to get to the other part of the board.
Yeah. So this was bad, and I think if once black has played it, black should try to take Sente with something like this. If white cuts and captures the stone, then black can play away. I marked some of the options that black has, like a Courier B or C, or moves that a computer would play. Those were moves that Leela gave me. I would feel perfectly happy playing a normal approach move to one of those corners.
Mm-hmm.
But black answered here. So I was happy that black played for territory there, and I got to play this big move in the upper right. And of course, this is making these two stones, the responsibility for those stones is reduced a lot because I played that move on the side. So even if black does capture those two stones, it's going to be on a small scale now. So it's okay for me.
Do you think black was feeling kind of comfortable because of it's got a huge right hand corner?
It's the kick in the lower right, the lower left corner. The kick in the lower left corner was sort of old style. It's a move that people used to play a lot.
Sure.
And people have stopped playing that kind of move after we had the AIs, you might say. Mm-hmm. So it's a move that has gone out of fad. It's not supposed to be so good. There's just less focus on taking territory and opening than there used to be.
Right. Well, and the other thing too, especially, is the huge, and this has always been the case, but it seems like it's more so, the huge emphasis on tempo and Sente. And
oh yes.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I don't think once he kicks, I don't think there's it's a one-way street, right? There's no way.
Oh, well, no, like I was showing you, he did have the option of playing here. However I answer at, I'm going to have to eventually prevent black from playing at F3. So this is the variation I was showing you.
I see.
And black does have Sente, and actually, it's not that bad on an exchange for black. So he could have done that.
Yeah, what do I?
It's probably better just to leave it without playing anything.
Cool.
For black, that is. So this was good, and I got to play towards the open space in the upper side. The reason that we used to emphasize taking territory is because territory is sort of in the bank, and you know how it works. Whereas even top pros can mess up a position like the upper side where white obviously has an advantage. but sometimes it's very difficult to actually make it turn it into something concrete.
Mm-hmm.
So that there used to be an emphasis on territory, but people are sort of, that's one of the things I think we're learning from the computer engines is how to make use of these open areas better.
Mm-hmm.
So black split the side. This is very classical, you might say. It's black has room to extend on both sides, two space extensions.
Right.
And to players who are Q players or low dans still learning stuff about the game, I would still recommend this move. But it's the old style. It's not played by computers. It's not played by top pros anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I marked A to show you where Lila wanted to play. The magic shoulder hit. Yeah. And that's another of those moves that every time you play it, it seems to magically increase your score. So like the moment black plays there, black score goes up a few notches.
Mm-hmm. Question from one of our viewers wondering about the difference. If you're you're looking at doing the old style but very understandable splitting in the upper side. You got J17 or K17. Both of them have room to extend on both sides. What are the relative merits?
Well, in this case, I think black does want to edge to the left as he did in the game because. Let's do a variation for that. Because when black plays here, we can be fairly certain that white's going to come from the wide side. And this sequence is white's position in the upper right corner is basically finished. White has succeeded in making a full territory and is putting pressure on the black stone still. Whereas in the game, if we go back to the game, white's stone in the lower left corner, when white has played the wider side, it's going to take a lot of work for white to change that into a territory, actually. Because although I played here in the game, black still has the 3-3 invasion or a peep at C15. Nowadays, floating in on the second line, like at B15, that's a popular move now. Or even on B16. All these moves can often get fairly good scores from computers. So black has a lot of choices in invading white's territory in the upper left corner. For the time being, black played here. This makes sense. But it's going to be difficult for white to take the whole corner anyway, even if white plays first.
Mm-hmm.
And so black is... when black plays this in the middle of the side here, you have to assume that white is going to pincer from the wide side, whichever way. Like even if black plays this side, although the distance is the same, white will be attacking from the weaker side, strengthening the relatively weak upper left corner because the upper right corner has a complete territory immediately. So this is working very well for white.
Right.
So this is the diagram that you have to have in your mind's eye when you play that when you split the side like that. And this one just gives black more opportunities to counterattack. So actually, black is looking at the white stones when black invades there to see which is the weaker white stone, and black is getting one line closer to the weak side. Which is in general, it's a good idea when you're entering your opponent's area of influence. Mm-hmm. It's usually not good just to be 100% defensive. It's really good if you can find the relatively weak part of your opponent's, even if you're going into a moyo. If you want to see that in play, you should just look at Cho Chi-kun's games in his prime. He was a genius at finding the weak point in a moyo. So like you could have this huge moyo, and when he invades it, it's more like he's attacking.
Right, which is pretty cool. Is it really turns a perceived weakness into a strength?
Yeah, his games get really complicated. But this case, I think it's a good example of the general idea that you want to edge closer to the weaker side.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
It was a very good question.
Yeah.
Actually, the computer wanted to play the attachment against the corner. But again, this is it's a new move that even AlphaGo, in its self-played games, I don't think it was playing it. I think maybe some of the Zero games might have had this move. But it really started with the computer programs after AlphaGo and fairly recently. So it's a very complicated, it's a relatively difficult move for most players to use. But this just for that idea, for instance, is if white plays here, then black has a 3-space extension with a potential forcing move here. So black would have more room on the side. So that's just one example. But you have to be ready for white to play something like this, and you have to know what's going to, like this would be some variation like this. Much more difficult for black to actually make this work when you compare it to the simple game move. So I don't really, you can try it out if you want. And I might try it out.
Preferably in a tournament game.
Well, I always do this stuff in tournament games. So black plays here. And now again, I was remembering the Master Series. When I'm playing these games, I often am remembering stuff that AlphaGo did. So I was remembering the games that AlphaGo played against human players in the Master, what we call the Master Series, where it was playing on the internet, and one of its handle names was Master. You remember that? So we call it.
No, I was just thinking because not to get ahead of ourselves, but that'll be volume 2, won't it?
I hope so.
We promised in 4 volumes, and that's the next one. So there's
okay.
the thing of so many of those games, though, right?
Well, do you remember this position? A very similar position occurred in one of the games that Master played against human players. Would you happen to remember where Master played in this local position, in the upper side? Of course, the lower side is different.
I'm thinking it's got to be like the attachment, or maybe even was this a 3-3?
No, it's white's turn.
Oh, I'm sorry, white's turn.
I think actually,
white
and black were interposed in that game.
Yeah. Was this where it played on the like on the shape point right in the middle?
I think you remembered it correctly.
Oh my God!
White played here, right?
And I wish I had. We should next time we do this. We make this a drinking game. I'll have to have my. We have a bunch of wine drinkers that are watching tonight. I'll have to get my wine drinking so that when I get it right, I'll have a sip. So yes, that's it. That's
when you get it right, you have a sip.
That's it.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So this is the move that AlphaGo played. It turns out that Leela thinks I could have just played simply like this. And this is something that happens with computer programs. I think the fact is that white already has a good position. And so the computer programs, the way I see it, they seem to be choosing relatively simple moves. Although the people from DeepMind didn't like the way I put it, but the way I see it, it seems to be that the computer is choosing simpler moves.
I have to say though, I have some really, I had forgotten that I took these. So folks, during the match with Lisa Dahl, and we talk about this in the book, we would often see some of the deep. We were always trying to get information out of the DeepMind, but those folks were like, they were all sworn to secrecy. It was so hard to get. It's like they worked for the NSA or something. You just couldn't get anything. But they loved to talk to us because they knew we were doing the commentary, and so they like to sort of give us.
A number of them were Go players too.
And a number of them were Go players, and if we got stuff wrong, they really liked to talk, which was great for us to know. But I have in the book, I'd forgotten. I was telling Michael before we started tonight. When Michael would be going over stuff with some of the programmers, and he'd be drawing out diagrams and stuff. I have some great pictures that I took of Michael sort of deeply immersed with the programmers that I don't think we published before. So this may be the first time we're publishing them. So
great! Yeah,
you were completely oblivious to me snapping away. You were deep in the weeds with the guys.
Yeah, we were talking important stuff, I'm sure.
We were. You were.
So yeah, in such cases, I think that my choice was probably okay. While the computer was just trying to, I would say the computer is trying to simplify the game because white's going to win anyway. And it knows it, because the computer knows it can win, Personally, I don't know that I can win. I have to. I feel that I have to keep on trying to do the best moves.
Sure.
So I think that's the difference here. Not necessarily that this move is so bad. I don't think I actually saw the score go down, but it was just that it wasn't being chosen by the computer. So black answered here. In this case, it's okay. It's a bit of a kikashi for white. I think I gained a little bit there. I'm feeling happy, and the computer agrees with me. Black played here, so I got to play this forcing move, and you can see I've created some potential here. Again, I cut here, just trying to get some extra momentum when I curl around at A.
Wait, this is the game, right?
This is the game, yes. So I just played there once.
Yeah.
Actually, to go back to that move, I think in the game that AlphaGo was playing against a human player, I think the human player actually played away here, and AlphaGo did this, which allows white to cut off black. Like I think one of the variations that maybe this was actually a game.
Yeah.
Something like this can happen, in which case the black rook is cut off. Like this would the black 3 stones on the left are cut off. It's probably good for white.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something similar to this is what happened in that game. I should say again that the overall position, of course, is completely different. What I played on the lower side was pretty original anyway, so it's completely different. But the local position is exactly the same. And so black answered here. Now that sort of made it easy for me because I don't have to take responsibility for this one stone I played here on the 5th line.
Right.
It was sente. So I keep the tempo. And my corner, the corner there is not 100% territory, but I can sort of count on getting either the right side or the upper right corner. One of those two would be good enough for me. So this is the game variation. I cut once here to give momentum to curling around at A. I could have curled around immediately. That might have been better. It's very similar. And black takes in a get up. It's pretty much, it's not as if I couldn't escape, but it's not a good idea to try to escape with these stones. Like what I'm talking about is this move. It's really ugly. This kind of escaping is just it's not good for white. Like black could be doing stuff like this. It's going to be more trouble for white than it's worth.
Oh, that shape is so ugly.
It's very ugly. So I didn't really seriously think about that.
I'm trying to count the number of empty triangles in that shape.
It's just so clumped up together. It's filling its own empty triangle.
Right.
So I played here.
But let me just jump in here because I think that for a lot of folks, and I saw some comments in this stream here. For a lot of folks, the whole point of that, separating exercise is to keep black separated. So it's important to show why, you started that, but that's not your plan.
My main concern is just to use the pencil. This whole area on the right side is all undecided. So I want to get as much of that as possible. And so my idea here is to get as many stones in that direction. So first of all, I started with the attachment and extension here. That started well for me on the upper side, and then I curled around here on the 5th. That's the 6th line. So these 3 stones that I've just marked, and later on, white has another forcing move, which is going to be in the center of the board. It's going to be either this point or this point. You see those 2 points I marked in the center of the board? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's where Lila and I had a disagreement, so we're going to get into
that. Can't wait to hear how it worked out with you disagreeing with me. Probably about as well as me disagreeing with my wife, which never works out. All right.
And,
so the basic idea here, just to remind folks, is that even though you've sacrificed them, there's still some life in them.
I still have 1 or 2 forcing moves. I was actually very interested that at various points in the game, Lila was suggesting that I play this attachment, which is another way to force from the outside, and it reinforces white in the corner. So the attachment at F14 is sometimes used. It has to be very timely, but it is something that white can use in some cases. So on the right side here, I'm really trying to punish that that black stone, the marked black stone.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I could have played more safely at A, and again, that was the move that Leela was suggesting. And again, I will say that I think that the idea is that white can just play safely and win if you're a computer. If you're Leela, then you can win just by playing the simpler way.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I'm still thinking that I have to really punish black and take a decisive advantage at this point. I don't want to get into a half-point difference. Like Leela is happy to be, like they said that about AlphaGo too, the people at DeepMind, they were saying that AlphaGo is happy to win by half a point. Right. I know that I can make mistakes in the end game, so I don't like to win by half a point. I'd rather have a few more points.
A little more margin.
Yeah. So black has established a potential life in the upper right corner, and I'm okay with that, provided I can get the right side. I was never hoping to get everything in that area. I just want to get either the right side or the upper right corner. That's going to be good enough for me. So black plays here, and I play this forcing move. So I played the knight's move with the idea that out in the center, comparing that move to white playing at A, I felt that playing the knight's move out in the center, it makes that stone lighter. So whatever happens, it's going to be well placed away from the black wall. Whereas if I play at A, then when this stone, black's going to answer something like this. When this stone gets cut off eventually, it could be more easy for black to cut it off and capture it. So my feeling was that it would be better to have it not actually touching the black wall. Mm-hmm. That was my feeling here. But Leela didn't like that. Leela punished me. Let's see. Leela punished me for 10% for playing this move.
10%? Wow. Wow.
I was astounded. I'm still a bit upset about that.
Is this the argument that you have, or
I still don't agree. I don't really see the difference here. Like this move, it looks like it's a very nice light move, and it doesn't really seem to be working badly. But I think 10% is a bit steep.
I mean, yeah, I'm
really hard to say.
Yeah, it is really hard.
It seems to be putting a bit more pressure on black in the center too. So I sort of think that for me it's okay. Mm-hmm. And so black plays again. The way black is playing here, black is obviously black does not have very much going on the right side. It looks like black could live on the side, but then the corner would die. So black's idea here is to hopefully to play some forcing moves from the center. Like for instance, if I played something like this, then black would play an Atari here, and then would have the life in the corner. So black's idea here is just to reduce my potential on the side as much as possible and live in the corner. Mm. That's the game plan that black has here. So my plan, my plan is to make the right side as important as possible. So I'm not going to play underneath like that. I'm going to play cutting. So when I do take the right side, it's going to be on a large scale.
Right.
And so black plays here anyway, and then cuts once and plays here. And this was really very educational and interesting to me because black actually could have attached here. And this was black's best move, objectively. And so this was shown to me by Leela, and I completely agree with this. Mm. White will probably, for the time being, white has to cover, and black will play this forcing sequence, pushing through. White will cover here. Black gets a cut there, and will play here. White probably wants to play here. The idea being that if black will extend. Now white has good shape in the center. And black will play the double honey here. This is actually a branching point where if black plays here, it's going to be a ko. White can fight the ko. It's no problem for white. And it's going to be some kind of a ko on the right side. But the point is white gets to squeeze in the center. With this magnificent thickness in the center of the board, I can afford to sacrifice the right side with a ko. So I'll get two moves elsewhere, and I have this huge thickness in the center of the board, and it's going to be good enough for me, even if I lose the right side.
No kidding! Wow.
So, wow. Well, co-threats, like I have a co-threat here, and again, the co-threat that Leela would probably want me to play if I started this ko Lee would probably have me playing this move. Um, something I have code threats there, and so the code's going to be okay for me.
Okay. All right.
This would actually be a big win for white. The center is so big, it's going to be very easy.
Mm.
So actually, to go back, the better move for black is to play the double hane. This one. And now if white covers, then it's trouble for black. Like if white covers, obviously white's going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's bad.
Yeah.
Even if white cuts, it's not so good, because if white cuts, now black starts the ko immediately. And in this case, it's not even a ko, because white cannot connect.
I was going to say, no, it's not a ko.
Yeah. Well, like maybe if I played here, it's still not a ko.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a disaster.
It's a disaster. So white's not going to answer that move. When black, let's see, let's go back once more. So when black plays here, white's going to connect. Black can live on the side, and white gets the thickness in the center again. So this is very similar to the other variation, only I didn't get to play a co-thread. But black is much more scrunched down. I still have, I can still push through on the side with a cut on the second line and pushing through here. So black actually, locally black needs one more move on the right side. And I still have this magnificent center. So this again is good for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I didn't get the co-threat, but black didn't get so much territory either.
Mm.
So that would be good for me too.
Wow, that's a lot of reading.
Oh yeah, well I felt that I was going to just read out this as much as possible, and I had most of the variations read out, but this move actually was the one that I had not read out. So it would have been exciting if black had played there.
Mm.
And that variation I showed you, I worked it out after the game.
Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
But that was probably black's best attempt in this position. In the game, black played here. And again, you can see that I am playing the strongest. I'm playing the most forceful moves when I play this move, for instance. I'm playing very forcefully here. And in this case, I have actually, I did fairly well to read out most of the variations. I had this read out pretty well. It's still a complicated position. If black extends at A, I just put that with the letters, but I might as well give you a variation.
Mm.
If black plays here, now in this case, it's just not working for black because after this, black has such bad shape. Black has to get rid of, white can push through on the fourth line here. So like if black plays here and something like this, then white can actually I'll just play an Atari here and then push through here. It's very simple for white to push through there and just completely kill black.
Mm.
So it's no problem there.
That's fierce.
Yeah, so I'm playing the strongest moves again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make this final fight on the right side very decisive, actually.
I was going to say, I mean, yeah, this is looking pretty large.
And although it's still very tactical here, I was confident enough that I had read out the variations. And so I get a Ponnuki in the center of the board. Again, you can see I'm sort of counting on thickness in the center of the board to make up for anything I lose on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
Black extends. And at this point, black went for a life on the right side, and I'm going to allow black to live. So this was the game move. The stronger move would be to play here and cut white off. Black does need that move at 3 to make a solid connection there. And white will continue here. This is more complicated, but it's probably not so good for black anyway. This kind of variation. White's pretty close to having a living shape. And black is in trouble, obviously. So it's not quite working for black. It's probably a bit of an overplay. So objectively, I think the game move.
Do you remember what the time was at this point of the game?
I was playing fairly quickly throughout the game, I think.
Yeah.
Even though it turns out I was not doing so well in the lower right area in the first fight. I basically had ideas of what I wanted to be trying to do, And so in a way, it was going according to plan, even though
Right.
it was not the ideal move according to Leela.
But it wasn't a disaster. I mean, it really didn't seem like it hurt you that much.
And then when Black lost the tempo in the lower
Right.
left corner, and I got to
Right.
play. After that, I felt comfortable with my overall position, and I was playing fairly quickly. So I used I forget how much time I actually used here, but I used enough time to be satisfied that I knew what was going on.
Well, it's interesting just watching this. I know to study it and so forth, but it looks. The thing is, your position there is so flexible that it's almost you give black sort of has limited options here. It can do
Right.
this or that, but I mean your position, you can make profit here, you can make profit there.
Yes, and although my moves, when I study them with the computer, they're probably not perfect. I am getting a lot. The ideas that I get are definitely influenced by AlphaGo and the
Right.
computer programs that came afterwards, because I'm trying to be flexible. That the
Right.
whole idea is that I need to have a flexible game plan, and I'm limiting my opponent's options here,
That's what it looks like.
as you
Yeah.
said. Yes. So Black plays here, making an eye, and next Black can play the Hane on the sixth line. So I pull back, and again you can see I'm planning. At some point, I can play some move from the lower side. Like I could play, for instance, this point. Or it might be better to play one to the left. Um, and I will have a lot of potential towards the center of the board. So I always have that as a kind of a backup plan.
Mm.
And Black cut on the second line. And now, of course, the ko is very, he pushed once here. Yeah, he cut on second line. The ko is going to be easy for me. So I play the ko. And I played the peep. But again, now this is where I was impressed. It's so much better to play the move that Leela wanted me to play.
Except when you
This
don't
one.
agree with Leela.
Yeah, there was that one case. It's so much better to play here. This is going to be forcing. And like, depending on how Black answers it, there's going to be more co-threats. So maybe Black answers here. This is going to reinforce the upper left corner. So the upper left corner is the last area where I have to be a bit careful, because there's that 3-3 point invasion. And the white stones in the upper left corner, if Black does invade in the 3-3 point, White has to remember that they're a bit distant from the rest of White's stones on the board, so they can easily get isolated. So anything that reinforces that group in the upper left corner is good. So that's why this was a better co-threat, and I really like that. I like the idea. It's going to be a valid co-threat in this point, especially when the ko is not so big on the right side. But I played the obviously forcing co-threat, and I don't have any co-threats now. And Black played here, so I just allowed Black to live. You can see that it's having a bad effect on the corner. In this position, the difference is that Black is alive on the right side, but at any point I can just kill the cornerstones. Or actually I can't, but it's going to be very painful. It is a ko. It's still a ko.
It's still a ko, right?
Yeah, it's still a ko because Black can play here, and if and then cover here. But this is going to change the endgame moves on the upper side too. So it's just going to be a 2-point life. It's always going to be painful for Black. So I have that. I still have that option. I'm gaining territory towards the right side. Later on, I can play this endgame. I'm actually getting something like at least if I play that exchange in Sente, it's about 6 points I get on the right side. So I'm getting some territory there. My upper side territory is sort of being consolidated, and I have potential in the center. So I had calculated that this would be good enough. And I played here. I'm starting to protect the corner. My opponent immediately jumped in. That's correct. So Black is probably gaining a little bit here, but at this point, I'm feeling a bit better about the overall position, and I'm willing to simplify things, you might say. So I'm playing relatively simple, and I'm feeling fairly happy that I'm ahead. So this is the final stages of the game. You can see White is probably not playing the best moves, but I felt confident that I had a safe margin at this point. So at this point, my opponent resigned,
Yeah.
It's probably pretty close before Komi.
Hmm. He can't afford to pay Comey though, right?
Right. That's exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's real. I mean, how what roughly not that far behind on the board actually, but just the
Mhm.
Comey's just too heavy.
Yeah,
What is
I think just going back a few moves actually, if I had found the optimal moves starting from this move actually, maybe playing something on the lower side would have been better.
just
Uh,
take the
just
profit.
taking more territory towards the lower side,
That's what
or I could,
I've been looking at that move for a while because it just seems so
um,
huge.
or even if I play the same continuation in the center, it might have been better actually for me to push once here first.
Did you look at? I mean, I'm just wondering if Leela has moves like that because it does seem like something like that.
Um, yeah, I wasn't. Leela was suggesting. Actually, I think it took a bit time for Leela to change to this move. It was suggesting moves in the area like this one too.
Yeah, yeah, that just seems like the biggest move on the board.
The one that I liked actually was this one where white pushes once and then gets into this variation. In which case, the center is a bit bigger. So I like this.
Okay, yeah,
However, white plays it like there's that upper right corner that's not alive yet. White has options to
oh,
increase
yeah, that's right.
territory.
I forgot about that. That's worth.
Um,
What's the? Well, that's an interesting question, right? What? I mean, that's actually countable how many points that is. So that's sitting there. But it's a Gote kill.
it's a co also. So it's a
Oh,
complicated.
that's
It's
right.
actually
That's
a
right.
more complicated
To count
calculation.
it, right? Yeah.
Um, so the difference there, it's 18. It's 22 points. The territorial difference is 22 points, but it's a co.
But it's a co, so you're going to give up something in the co.
Right. So it's not really all that big. The
Right.
lower half of the board is still bigger than that.
Right. Right. Wow. Wow. That's a really good game, and I have to tell you, Michael, that starting from the moves at the very top, it really felt like like you took control. I mean, you had that little kind of thing in the lower right, and then black sort of gave you back the tempo on the left. Um, but then it just felt like in the play and in the middle top of the handling of that, it just felt like you really had a plan there,
Yeah.
and just I really it felt. I'm glad that you remind me of the master game because it really feels like a master game. It just felt like White has many ways to win this, and you don't have to be able to count to a half point. I mean, this
Right.
is you've got
Well,
Comey.
I think I was consciously imitating AlphaGo when I played this move that I'm showing here. And in general, the way I was handling the upper right area was definitely influenced by computer programs. So
Hmm.
it's something that I think that I has improved my game in
Well,
shows in this.
and it's interesting because, frankly, with you basically channeling an AI against somebody who clearly is doing kind of the old school invasion there, it's a pretty good case study for the advantages of the AI play. You know,
Well, yeah, that's true also, and also there is the fact that I've always tended to play better um, when I'm in the attacking position.
right?
When you compare, and I think that sort of shows in this game where I was getting fancy in the lower right corner, and it wasn't actually that valid the way I
Right,
handled it.
right. But we all like Q2. Q2 shows is
Yes.
fun. Uh, Quick question before we wrap up. There was a big debate that was going on, and I could never figure out a way to. It wasn't really appropriate to the discussion of the game, but I think it's an important question, and I would like to get you to weigh in. There's a big discussion going about what constitutes a vulgar move. The question of is it a translation issue from Japanese? So just like to get your
Hmm.
take on vulgar moves.
Well,
Not that you would ever
there's
play them, but
I would say that was a direct um, translation with a concept that is very difficult to translate. And so it was a direct use of the English word that corresponds to that Japanese word. But when you say vulgar move, I don't think the meaning the intended meaning really doesn't connect.
Explain
It's sort of like the opposite of a tesuji.
the opposite.
Yeah.
So tsuji is a clever move.
Right. Yes. So what they call a zoksu or a vulgar move is generally a move that it's usually a kind of a forcing move. Quite often it's a forcing move, but it's a move that loses potential usually.
Mm-hmm.
So there's any move you choose, usually quite often fixing a shape gains something, but also loses some potential to do something else. And so when you're losing potential to do the thing you really want to do and getting something pretty worthless instead, then quite often it's called a vulgar move.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the vulgar sort of connects to the fact that usually it's a forcing move and people are really happy because they think it's a kikashi.
Right. And that's different. So good question, folks, and a good discussion to have. And words matter because they have to do with concepts and understanding the concept. So it's not simply a question of dictionary definition. These are important concepts. So I think I was enjoying watching the debate going on, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Look at that. One other question here. I think it's a good question. I was going to ask you earlier about this. How was it playing against your former teacher? Did that affect your strategy at all? Were there things that you knew, or did that factor in at all?
Well, I was pretty sure he would be playing kind of an old-fashioned style, and so I started the game with the idea that I was gonna see how what I've learned from computer programs would be working against that, because actually territory is very valuable. So it's not as if it's clear cut that white is going to win in games like this. And so I was sort of from the start of the game, I had the idea that I was going to try to make it work and see how it turned out. Just playing as much of the computer style game moves, you might say, as I could.
Right. Well, it's a great game. I have to say I love the AlphaGo games, but I really enjoy your games. You really bring a lot to it, and they're just fun. And I think spending so much time we spend with the AlphaGo games, and they can be, I don't want to say inhuman or bloodless, but because they're so finely calculated, it's really nice when we have two flesh and blood players playing, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I agree.
A lot of fun. Enjoyed it. Hope everybody out there enjoyed it as well. A couple of reminders. Check out the Go Congress site. It's going to be a lot of fun, as it is every year. The contributions link is on there as well. And keep an eye on usgo.org. If all goes according to plan, we should have some big announcements about Volume 1 of, I guess we could tell them the title, AlphaGo to Zero is the name of the book. It actually has a name, Volume 1. So hopefully look for that soon. So we'll have that out there. Thanks again, Michael. Thanks to everybody for watching, and we will see you all next time. Oh, and thank you, of course, to Stephen Hu, our fabulous producers, doing such a great job. Thank you so much, Stephen. Not only getting us on here, but he's handling a lot of the stream, so we appreciate all of that. All right, that's it. We'll see you next time. Appreciate it.